Hey everybody, Tim here from the Boring AI Show. Hey, Tally and I are going to be in Portland, Oregon, August 17th through 20th at the Medicaid Enterprise Systems Conference. That's the MESC conference. So we'll be there talking about AI adoption, talking about the transformations we've worked with various agencies, state agencies around this. So if you get a chance, come stop by booth 719 and pay us a visit, say hi. We'd love to chat with you about what you're working on in the world of AI.
Welcome to the Boring AI Show, the podcast for people who want to understand AI beyond the headlines. We talk about the useful, messy, funny, and very human side of bringing artificial intelligence into the real world. Now, here are your hosts, Tim and Tally.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Boring AI Show with Tim and Tally. Tally, welcome.
Hey, guys. Hey, Tim.
All right. So whenever we're getting ready to do an episode, we meet in like a writer's room style and talk about what we're going to talk about. And so today we are going to talk about humans and machines, or human and AI, and what's best for which. So Tally, just to kick us off, like, how would you define, like, what is the best work for humans? What's the best work for machines? Is there a line? How do people see it? Let's jump right into it. I guess, I skipped our normal, like, hey, AI in the news. But yeah, let's just get into our conversation. Sorry for those who wanted that news bit. So
let's get in. So, I mean, I'm going to give the annoying answer of it depends. Right. And it depends what your objective is. But I'd say generally speaking, if we're looking for a rule of thumb, more creative-based, anything that requires human connections, client service, problem solving, final decision making, ideally is a more human task. Whereas things that can be, pretty repetitive, or think in terms of automation, could be automated, tends to do better with machines. But of course, there's always if and buts to all those examples I listed there. But what are your thoughts, Tim? I mean, what are the major things that come to mind when you think of a human task versus a machine or AI task in terms of this conversation?
Yeah, I think this is a very much a cultural, defined thing. So what is okay in one culture might not be okay in another culture. So for instance, I'm thinking of customer service is a great example. So some people would say, yes, we can have the robot answer the call and take you through a phone tree to get to, self-service, and people would rather have that. Some people would disagree with that statement. There's also companies that are like, no, a human will always answer the phone and take you through where you need to go. Which one's right? Which one's wrong? It really depends on what is it that you're trying to do as a company, and who are you? And so, for whether it's mind over machines or any knowledge-based company, what's the difference between just having your AI do the work versus having people who have experience doing the work, and what's the line of, like, AI can help, but the human drives it. And so, we always talk about, like, work kind of falling into a couple different buckets. Like, there's the AI leads the work with human oversight. Then there's humans lead the work with AI assistance. And then there's humans do the work, no AI at all. And so really looking at the task and say, where does this fit for us culturally? I think is a really critical discussion as a group. Sally, reactions to that?
I love that. I mean, I love the idea of cultural alignment, understanding, does this align with the organization's values? But I think the other piece to also really think about is what is the, all of our intentions can always be in the right place, but what is the actual experience or outcome of using AI versus a human? Does it make the work experience worse or better? Does it make the customer on the other end, appreciate your product and have a great experience, or be frustrated by the end of it? And I think it's thinking holistically, not only in terms of value alignment and obviously risk mitigation, but also in terms of what is the actual client journey or experience that they're experiencing, whether that's internal clients or external. When I use that,
I'm glad you mentioned the internal client, because that's one thing. As I was just thinking, as we talk about like specific processes. So like, let's talk about HR onboarding. This is something that is on my mind because I'm getting ready for a workshop next Tuesday, and we'll be talking about HR onboarding. And so in our workshops, we always ask, like, what do you guys think? HR onboarding, is that something that AI can assist with? Is it something that should be all AI? Something that should be human? What are your thoughts? And we always get the room split. Like, some people are like, as much of that as AI can take, AI should take. And we have some people who are like, no way, because AI, isn't, is you really want that making the decision of who's part of your team? And so, I think this is a great example of, well, what works for you as an organization and you as a person, and so having those conversations with your team is really, really critical. And not just waiting until, okay, well, we've built this HR chatbot. Now I guess we should talk about what we want it doing and not doing. Yeah. So
yeah, and I think it's so important to actually have both those people in a room. I know we've talked about this before,
yes.
but I think having folks who maybe lean more into like what's the latest and greatest technology or new thing out there, and focus on efficiency versus people who are like, whoa, no, let's, protect maybe the quality and let's think through something first and really understand a tool and its outcomes before just implementing that. So yeah, I think it's important to definitely think holistically. And I know you brought up, HR onboarding, and I do think it's so different it's just so nuanced. I wish there was a cut and dry answer, but I think there's, certain elements of onboarding that are going to be better than others. Maybe being the final decider in who one should hire in conducting interviews, shouldn't be taken over, but maybe, a HR policy chatbot could be really beneficial, especially maybe to somebody who doesn't want to share personal details around, I don't know, health insurance, for example, or something like that. So it's really just so nuanced. And I think every department, all the different use cases, it really is going to vary on your company's culture. And yeah, like, something we talked about before, but that job to be done, what is it that you're actually trying to achieve?
Yeah. And to your point as well, recognizing there's some things people will be more comfortable talking to the AI about than they are talking to another human about. And there was a research study about this not too long ago. It's not recent, but it was not too long ago, where it found, and I'd have to dig to find it. Maybe Nicholas, you find it more easily than I can as we get the show notes ready. But it was about how people are more likely to share sensitive information with an AI system because they don't fear the judgment from a human, like that they'd get from a human. And so that they'd be more upfront with the AI about, private matters. And that, I think, is really important to recognize that that's a thing, and just as much as it's a thing that you don't want to trust that the AI, an example we use in a lot of our workshops, like we talk about like the final approval for like your last chance cancer treatment, for survival, like to be able to survive cancer, the last possible treatment you have. I don't think anybody would be okay with like, yeah, it's okay if a machine makes that choice. We would like to think there's a human who has made that decision of whether I can get this, life-saving procedure or not. It's not left up to an algorithm. I think we all maybe don't live in that fantasy world, but that's how things really are. But it'd be nice, like, to have some things that are like, that's a human thing. And so,
and
what is that?
And also the flip side of that, I mean, maybe, we all have our inherent biases, whether we like to admit it or not. And so maybe there's something where if we could take that out and, blindly look at, and there's pros and cons, for example, for resumes, that maybe there's times where actually humans' own personal biases can get in the way of I don't know, giving the right care to the right type of person based on, how they look or their background or things like that. So It's really interesting. I think, I don't know. I actually just had a conversation this weekend with, I don't know if you've heard about Waymos. They're all in California and in Denver. They're just starting to, kind of, I don't think they're fully released, but they're training them. So we're starting to see them all over the streets here. And it's really interesting, some of the feedback. I have a lot of friends who are in the camp of like, either all cars need to be self-driving or all car, like it's that in between that people are afraid of, because it's like, well, how will, in Denver, there's a lot of transplants here. And so when you're at a stoplight or you're at like a four-way intersection and you're trying to like look at each other's eyes to see who's going to go, at the East Coast, it's very much, or at least my experience in driving, in Philly, okay, you got there for, it's your turn. It's very assertive. Here, there's a lot more Midwesters. It's politeness. It's, and so if if you don't have maybe some of this human insight, how do you connect with and kind of read that? But of course, if the cars are all automated and they're all communicating with each other, then that's going to be in sync. So it's this weird in between that I think a lot of people struggle with, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. Because I think sometimes it's that blurred line of like how much human, how much machine, and how do those human and machines work together? How do we re-engineer a process with both of these, leveraging both of the human and the machine's, strengths, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it very much comes into what in the world of information security we used to call, I still call it, but I'm not so much in that world anymore, but compensating controls. Like you have your controls that you implement to secure an environment or secure a system or secure whatever. And then you have compensating controls to pick up the slack. And so maybe you have an AI filter that's looking at resumes and filtering down, because again, good or bad, and it's been this way for much of my managerial career, which is spanning quite many years now, double-digit years. You put out a job ad and you're flooded with resumes, and many of which are not at all qualified for the job. It's just, okay, there's a new job. I'll just post to it. I'll apply to it. Now I know that that's significantly worse than it has been in the past because I can just have, AI tools submitting my resume to stuff. And so not saying any of this is good or bad, just saying it is what the market looks like at the moment. So you have AI filters that are looking to filter out information. That's like your primary control. I'm using AI to filter down to get the most qualified candidates, air quotes on those words. But you should also have compensating controls where the human is injected into the process and is reviewing. So what resumes have been rejected and why? Like not all of them. I'm not saying review every single resume that's coming through the system, because then you've lost all value to the AI being there at all. But you should be checking in. Is it doing its job? Just like you check a human, is the human doing their job? Like it's, what's the quality of the work they're doing? We used to call this the diamond in the rough, kind of the Aladdin analogy of like, oh, you missed this person. They had some secret sauce that the AI would not possibly be able to pick up. And so in review, you were able to find it. So trying to balance out, the value.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I like using it as not as the sole, decision maker, but as like a final, as an extra check and balances to try to avoid and mitigate risk where needed, as opposed to like a full, replacement in one area. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think this is where, again, this morning, Tally and I were chatting about something else, and she asked how my day was. I was like, well, I'm dealing a lot with hallucinations and psychosis, and dealing with AI hallucinations and psychosis, and recognizing that, you really can't have where you have a task that's 100% AI. It is 100%. It's going to nail it every single time. It's going to do a great job every single time. I mean, that's not how these tools work. What you want is that it's doing a sufficient job when you need it and when you're using it. And so what are your human controls to check in on your AI's work and make sure that it's doing what's supposed to be doing, whether it's filtering resumes, whether it's reviewing cancer imagery, whether it's, building reports, whether it's fine tuning a presentation. Um, you know, uh, One of the use cases I had recently was I had slides from another deck that were totally a different format and style, different branding even because it was so old. Um, and we wanted to bring them into a new deck. Well, that's a great activity. We use Claude in through PowerPoint to just take this slide, integrate it into this deck using the modern branding. And it did a great job with it. That, do I need to be making sure every step of the process is done by a human? Absolutely not. But do I need to go through and make sure it was done right? Yeah. Gotta make sure that
Yeah.
all the important stuff was kept there.
I love that. And so what I'm hearing from that then is really, a reshift of our expectations of some of these tools and maybe our humans even as well, not expecting a tool to maybe be an end all be all or replacement for a human, which is I think where some people's, mental map is currently, but understanding that, it could be beneficial and also still probably needs, final checks and balances and reviews. But even if something can save you, 10 minutes or gives that added extra quality of work that you're producing, that's where the value add is, as opposed to like a human replacement or humanoid, so to speak.
Yeah. And, so let's use a very real world example of this. So when working on a report recently about how the infrastructure of Copilot works, one of the things that I am a big fan of is having listening to what was written, so that it's not just reading what was written, but listening to it as well. And this is a great example of, yes, I could read it aloud. I absolutely could read it aloud. But again, then I don't know. It's not the same. So I have Microsoft Word read the document to me, and it reads it out loud for me. And if it's like a PDF that I'm working on or a PDF that I'm producing, I'll use like 11 Labs Reader to read it to me, so that I can hear it while I'm reading it, processing. Is that how I want this to sound? Is that how I want this to be structured? And there's a value to it. Again, leveraging the AI system to amplify the human. It's not that, I can't read this to myself out loud. I can. There's more value, I feel like, for me, and just how my brain works, to listen to Microsoft Word read it, unless it's like the Mac voices, which Word needs to work on a little bit, but that's where 11 Labs we come in. So,
well, and again, in that example, you had existing knowledge of how you work, how your brain works, how you that you need to listen as opposed to read to absorb the information better, and how that would work in your process flow. So I think it's really breaking down what is the task we're trying to achieve, what is the best possible way to go about that, and then is AI the solution for that, as opposed to let's figure out how AI can work here. It's really understanding this is the process that I need. These are the things that I need in order to get the output I'm seeking. And then seeing if, how AI can maybe work into that process.
Yeah. And a lot of times we catch ourselves Tally and I we'll say like human versus machine. And that's one of the things we try to avoid saying. But you just get it's so in the social norms now. But, think of human and AI or human and machine. It's more like a slider versus a checkbox, and so
great imagery. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you on that slider for this task? And again, when we say this task, what we mean is, so you have a business process. So HR onboarding in general is a process. That process is composed of a bunch of tasks. So for each of those tasks, where are you on the human AI slider? Where, you might have some tasks that are all the way on the AI side. For instance, you might have a robotic process automation capability that takes data from the HR system and manually types it into the finance system because those systems don't connect. Like, you don't need a human to do that. You should have a human checking to make sure everything is done right. So where is that check step in your process? And so as you're thinking about each step in your process, where are you on the slider? And it's very important also to recognize sometimes you could have an AI do something, but you don't want it to. So Tally, you got some thoughts on that or any examples in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to, like the example that comes to mind is like even summarizing. People think, okay, let's use AI to summarize this document. And that could be really great. Again, it depends on the use case. I think, if you're just trying to maybe quickly get through a couple news articles before your day starts to make sure you're kind of absorbing the information you want. But if you're using that maybe to digest a legal document where you need to be really cautious of the different verbs and verbiage, and that's really dependent on a contract that you're held to, that probably isn't something that you want to summarize. And then I could see, getting frustrated, be like, well, why didn't AI, list this one special, specific word in this situation? Well, that's where the human really needs to take a step back and think, was this actually a great use case for AI in this situation? Or is there, a need to have a human actually do that contract review, for example? So, there's things that maybe AI is quote unquote capable of, but it's figuring out if, not just the capability, but is the end result that you're seeking actually going to be produced in the way that you're using it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And recognizing that you might have to reimagine the task based on, well, we don't have to work how we used to work. There are changes that have come. So again, I want this document to be read back to me. I can add that as part of the checks and balances of the document. Have Word read this document to me, or export it as a MP3 file so I can listen to it as I'm driving wherever I'm going. At the same time, recognizing that, where was I going with this? Bear with me. I had a good thought, and then it got slippery and slid away. So Tally, you were saying
it's true.
we're talking about the.
I do. I think that human versus machine. Actually, I think that's a great analogy for human versus machine. I think it is slippery. I don't think that it's cut and dry. I think a lot of times we think, automation is great for repetitive tasks. When we think of AI specifically, there's summarization, there's generation, content generation, image generation, text generation. There's these different buckets that it can absolutely fall in, but that doesn't mean that it should be used in every single use case, or that it would be beneficial in every single use case. So I think it's also taking the time to understand, here are the capabilities, and here are the strengths of a tool versus the strengths of a person. And does it actually make sense, and will it give us the outcome we're seeking? And not just the outcome of, in my example, summarization, but the outcome of, am I going to mitigate the risks of fully understanding this document? Oof, I don't think that's going to be done just using AI here, for example, So really thinking on what we call, Tim, like that job to be done.
Yes.
In my mind is that critical piece when thinking to use, of when to use human or machine.
Yeah. And good job recovering from my slipperiness, because I remember now what I was getting ready to say. So talking about restructuring tasks in work, summarization is a great example of this. Because often, a lot of times, people are like, "Hey, I need to summarize the whole document," and you don't have to. Like, that's how we would think prior to having our AI tools. You can just summarize sections of a document. You could summarize all the sections of the document and read basically the Cliff's notes of the document, and so there might be times where that's appropriate. If you're wanting to gain familiarity with the NIST risk management framework for AI, like, do you need to read the entirety of the document? Depends on your role. You might not, but it could be really helpful for you to summarize each chapter and say, okay, explain this chapter to me. Or summarize subsections of that chapter, explain this area to me, explain this area. And so you're not reading, the 300-page document. You're reading a 50-page targeted summary for you broken into sections. And so again, just encouraging people as you think through your work, there's how we've always done it because we are humans, and that's the best way that humans should do it. But we're at a point now where the very real question to be asked is, but is there a better way to do that same task if we had AI layered into it?
Yeah, I really like that. And now I know most of this conversation we've talked about, humans and, for the most part, AI speaking primarily around, various chatbots. I'm thinking, ChatGPT, things like that. Now, for those listening, I mean, would you have slightly different answers based on not only different types of tools? I know we've talked about how different types of tools might be better at certain skill sets. But also now as we think about more like task-specific tools or skills, like how do you think that comes into play here for folks who are thinking maybe one tool is better for, instead of more broadly speaking? Do you think, the type of tool also plays a component?
Yes, absolutely does. And going back to our slippery slope. So maybe that's the takeaway everybody has is, oh, it's slippery and it depends. And we want to give you a little bit more concrete than that, but your culture will derive a lot of this. So stepping back, talking about different types of AI systems for the modern age. There's lots of, over the many years of AI, we've had expert systems and decision tree systems and robotic process automation systems and all this stuff. So one of the models that I like to help people frame up today is you have assistants, which are your chatbots. I'm ChatGPT, Claude. I ask you a question, you give me an answer, and we have a back and forth. That's and the human is really using the assistant kind of as a knowledge transfer system. I ask you a question, you give me an answer and give me information. I go do something with that information. You have autonomous systems, which are it runs on its own. These are your workflow systems, whether it's Power Automate workflows, it's decision systems, but you have intelligence built in for it to be able to route and do things based on what it knows and what you've taught it to be able to do. ServiceNow workflows, could be a good example of this. Again, with intelligence built in, as simple if this, then that, based on no implementation of intelligence. That's not an AI system. That's just a decision tree system. And it has its purpose, it has its value, but it does its own thing. So an autonomous system, though, one of the key things there is, don't forget, it needs to be reporting to you about what it's doing. It's doing it, keeping a log of what it's done and all of its decisions and all that good stuff, so that you can reference that information. It's much more hands-off. It's kind of running in the background. Humans should be interacting with it, but more from a review perspective and an oversight perspective. And then we have agents. So we have assistants, which is human is directing and human is acting on what comes out of it. We have autonomous, which is the AI system is making its decisions and doing stuff, that has been predefined. And then we have agents, which agents are figuring out what to do, usually with a human partner, and then taking action on it. And so as an example of this, I'm using an agent to help me build out whiteboards in Miro for an upcoming presentation. And so I've directed it. Here are the things I want you to build. Here's how I'm thinking about this. How would you, is there anything I missed here? And what do we need to do go forward? And it's determining how to best achieve the goals that I set forward for it, build out these boards for this work, for this workshop I'm doing. And then it'll provide me, okay, I'm thinking about doing this. Is that okay? And I said, yes, that's okay. And that back and forth. So how it's different than assistant is it can figure out what it should do and then go do it, again, in a perfect world with my approval and direction. So did I miss anything there, Tally?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And again, the summary there is, it really depends. It's everything is so nuanced, and of course those factors, the type of tool you're using is absolutely going to play a role in when to use it and when to use it in accordance with the human, depending on the process.
And it's okay to have like these people, in the organization have a different setup than everyone else. Like we see this often, that you'll have some people who they're the AI forward team, they're the explorers, they're the people who have done a lot of risk management training, who have done a lot of assessment of what they're trying to do. They have a different level of AI capability because they have a different level of responsibility, right? And maybe this is tying into seeing Spider-Man Brand New Day this weekend, which was amazing. But with great power comes great responsibility. And
there you go.
The reality is these AI agents and autonomous systems and assistants, they do bring a lot of value when used appropriately and with human oversight and interacting in your processes. So where I guess I would caution people is don't always approach this as we need the one rule to rule them all. Again, Lord of the Rings reference there. So we got Lord of the Rings and Spider-Man happening this episode. Man, this episode's going geeky. But it's okay to have different cohorts who are doing different things. The key is make sure that everybody's tied into your culture and what is culturally acceptable in your organization. I think that's a main takeaway here. And that's not, it depends. And that's not so slippery because your organization will have very definitive beliefs of what is okay to be human and what is not. So.
I love that. Awesome. Well, do we want to end it on some use cases here, Tim, or how you've been maybe using AI recently and maybe tie even back to the theme of why you chose to use it in combination with human instead of, how it fits in?
Yeah, I've been blabbing on a whole bunch, Tally. So why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. So I think you might have, I know you've definitely recommended this to me, but I don't know if we've talked about it on the show yet, but I've just started doing this lately. I sometimes like to leave my calendar open in between meetings just in case, client stuff pops up and I want to be flexible. But because of that, it's harder to chunk time. And then all of a sudden you're context switching too much and it's just not efficient. And so leveraging AI, not to manage my calendar for me, but to help advise on like what to start my day with, what to prioritize. And then, of course, I'm going back in and reviewing and making sure that's correct. And I feel confident in that. But it can help me, especially if your tool has access to your email and your inbox, see, is there anything I missed? Is there anything here that I should be focused on that I'm not? And so just added this added check to make sure there's nothing being missed. Obviously still check in with your PMs and the team and make sure that this is accurate. But just as a way to frame your day each day, that's been a really helpful use case for me of just, what should I be focused on? What's the best, most efficient way to manage time with the least amount of context switching? And it's just a helpful way to reframe, especially if you get in the habit of like, okay, I have this meeting today, I'm going to work on this type of client work. Oh, but I got to switch it, and just giving you maybe a different way of looking at it. I found that to be really, really helpful.
That is awesome. I love that use case. I tack onto that, each morning. Copilot, what do I got going on today? And it gives you a great answer. And so that's a great, that's a very concrete and usable use case for people to take away. I hope everybody gives that a try because it is so good. So cool.
Hey, what about yours, Tim?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about that's a good use case, but I think I'm going to go with, okay, so I mentioned earlier, getting ready for this workshop. And one of the things that we know in workshop facilitation is you got to break people away from thinking about applying these skills to their, it might sound challenging, but like when they're learning a new skill, you don't want people thinking about how do I apply this today to my world? Like, because that gets all kinds of questions in their head of why this won't work. And so you create buffers of like that you have to press through for people to actually learn the skill because they're saying, well, this isn't going to work for me because X, Y, and Z. And so one of the things that you do as a facilitator, you stand up a fake organization. Hey, we're working with this organization, and here's what their process is, and it's intentionally broken. So there's no judgment. Nobody's getting their feelings hurt that you're calling their process is broken. And let's apply AI to work through this process. So my use case was using Adobe Firefly. I was able to build a full identity kit for this fake company. And this way I can like create slides for the fake company and be able to have a much more immersive experience as we talk through the fake company.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's also fun because we can take that same company brand and content and bring it into like 11 Labs agents and have an interactive agent who works at the company to be, this is Donna from HR, and she's going to talk about the HR onboarding process. And so it really helps you create this super immersive environment that lets the learners and the cohorts disconnect from their day to day, focus on this fictional company, and be able to really learn the skills and feel like they're really making an impact on this fake company. So that's it was really fun. Adobe Firefly using boards. So they're Firefly boards.
Yeah. No, I love that example. And I think it brings up the example of just using AI to help create, fake or sample data and data sets and different things to use as either in learning environments or for examples, or to remove, like you said, the personal element. If it's, your own organization, your own department, it can feel sometimes too close to home. And so to have that secondary perspective, I really, really like that example. That's great.
Yeah. And maybe it's also for me, like growing up as a developer in Microsoft Technologies, you always had Northwind, which was like the fake outdoor company. It's like REI. It was the fake outdoor company for that you would get like a sample data warehouse. It'd be the Northwind data warehouse. It was cool. Like Microsoft did a real nice job with it. And then their one recently is Contoso. And so Contoso, I always think of Costco when I think of it, but I don't know if it's just because the name is close, but it's cool. Like, it helps people, kind of have here's what I can work with. And so maybe Tally in the future, we could have even more, like we've done with ABC Corp. Well, maybe this new organization that I've cooked up for this workshop could be our new sample company for people to see. So.
Love it. I think absolutely. Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this slippery and depends conversation. And we hope you enjoyed it and got some stuff out of it. Let us know, what processes are you thinking about, and what's the level of human you feel for that process or task. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Send us, email us. You can connect with us through the show. And let us know what you're working on. Where's the line for you guys? So
yeah,
human and
happy
AI.
To have more slippery and nuanced conversations if
Yes.
you guys want to chat through too.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks for joining us on The Boring AI Show. Practical AI minus the hype. Subscribe, share it with someone on their own AI journey, and we'll see you next time.
Hello, Boring AI Show fans. This is Tally with the Boring AI Show, here to let you know that Tim and myself, along with some other Mind Over Machine folks, will be at the MESC, that's Medicaid Enterprise Systems Conference, this month, August 17th to the 20th in Portland, Oregon. So if you're there, please stop by booth 719. And if you're not able to make it, please tune in, as we will be giving updates throughout the Boring AI Show releases. Thank you so much, and can't wait to hear from you all or see you on site.